Leviticus Chapter 13. Then Jehovah spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, When a man has a swelling or an eruption or a bright spot on the skin of his body, and it becomes an infection of leprosy on the skin of his body, then he shall be brought to Aaron the priest or to one of his sons the priests. And the priest shall look at the infection in the skin of the body, and if the hair in the infection has turned white and the appearance of the infection is deeper than the skin of his body, it is the infection of leprosy. When the priest has looked at him, he shall pronounce him unclean. And if the bright spot is white on the skin of his body, and its appearance is not deeper than the skin, and the hair on it has not turned white, then the priest shall isolate the one who has the infection 7 days. And the priest shall look at him on the 7th day, and if in his eyes the infection remains, and the infection has not spread in the skin, then the priest shall isolate him 7 more days. And the priest shall look at him again on the 7th day, and if the infection has faded, and the infection has not spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, it is only a scab. And he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scab spreads further on the skin after he has showed himself to the priest for his cleansing, he shall show himself again to the priest. And the priest shall look, and if the scab has spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean, it is leprosy. When the infection of leprosy is in a man, then he shall be brought to the priest. And the priest shall look, and if there is a white swelling in the skin, and it has turned the hair white, and there is living raw flesh in the swelling, it is a chronic leprosy on the skin of his body, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He shall not isolate him, for he is unclean. And if the leprosy breaks out further on the skin, and the leprosy covers all the skin of the one who has the infection, from his head even to his feet, as far as the priest can see, then the priest shall look, and if the leprosy has covered all his body, he shall pronounce him who has the infection clean. It has all turned white, he is clean. But whenever raw flesh appears on him, he shall be unclean. And the priest shall look at the raw flesh and pronounce him unclean. The raw flesh is unclean, it is leprosy. But if the raw flesh again turns white, then he shall come to the priest. And the priest shall look at him, and if the infection has turned white, then the priest shall pronounce him who has the infection clean, he is clean. And when the body has a boil on its skin, and it has healed, and in the place of the boil there is a white swelling or a reddish-white bright spot, then it shall be shown to the priest. And the priest shall look, and if its appearance is below the surface of the skin, and the hair on it has turned white, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the infection of leprosy, it has broken out in the boil. But if the priest looks at it, and if there is no white hair in it, and it is not below the surface of the skin, but it has faded, then the priest shall isolate him 7 days. And if it spreads further in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean, it is an infection. But if the bright spot remains in its place and does not spread, it is only the scar of the boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or when the flesh has on its skin a burn by fire, and the raw flesh of the burn becomes a bright spot, reddish-white or white, then the priest shall look at it, and if the hair in the bright spot has turned white, and its appearance is deeper than the skin, it is leprosy. It has broken out in the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean, it is the infection of leprosy. But if the priest looks at it, and if there is no white hair in the bright spot, and it is not below the surface of the skin, but it has faded, then the priest shall isolate him 7 days. And the priest shall look at him on the 7th day. If it spreads further in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean, it is the infection of leprosy. And if the bright spot remains in its place, and it has not spread in the skin, but it has faded, it is the swelling from the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is only the scar of the burning. And if a man or woman has an infection on the head or on the beard, then the priest shall look at the infection, and if its appearance is deeper than the skin, and there is in it thin yellowish hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a scale, it is leprosy of the head or of the beard. And if the priest looks at the infection of the scale, and if its appearance is not deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall isolate the one who has the infection of the scale 7 days. And on the 7th day the priest shall look at the infection, and if the scale has not spread, and there is no yellowish hair in it, and the appearance of the scale is not deeper than the skin, then he shall be shaved, but the scale he shall not shave. And the priest shall isolate the one who has the scale 7 days more. And on the 7th day the priest shall look at the scale, and if the scale has not spread in the skin, and its appearance is not deeper than the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. And he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scale spreads further in the skin after his cleansing, then the priest shall look at him, and if the scale has spread in the skin, the priest need not seek for the yellowish hair, he is unclean. But if in his eyes the scale has remained, and black hair has grown up in it, the scale is healed, he is clean. And the priest shall pronounce him clean. And when a man or a woman has bright spots on the skin of their body, white bright spots, then the priest shall look, and if the bright spots on the skin of their body are a dull white, it is a rash that has broken out on the skin, he is clean. And if a man loses the hair of his head, he is bald, he is clean. And if he loses hair from his forehead and his temples, he is bald on the forehead, he is clean. But if on the bald head or the bald forehead there is a reddish-white infection, it is leprosy breaking out on his bald head or on his bald forehead. Then the priest shall look at him, and if the swelling of the infection is reddish-white on his bald head or on his bald forehead, like the appearance of leprosy in the skin of the body, he is a leprous man, he is unclean. The priest shall surely pronounce him unclean, his infection is on his head. And as for the leper in whom the infection is, his clothes shall be torn, and the hair of his head shall be let loose, and he shall cover his upper lip and cry, unclean, unclean. He shall be unclean all the days during which the infection is in him, he is unclean. He shall live alone, his dwelling shall be outside the camp. The garment also that the infection of leprosy is in, whether it is a woolen garment or a linen garment, whether it is in warp or woof, of linen or of wool, whether in a skin or in anything made of skin. If the infection is greenish or reddish in the garment or in the skin, or in the warp or in the woof, or in anything of skin, it is the infection of leprosy and shall be shown to the priest. And the priest shall look at the infection and isolate the article which has the infection for 7 days. Then he shall look at the infection on the 7th day. If the infection has spread in a garment, either in the warp or in the woof, or in the skin, whatever the purpose the skin is used for, the infection is a malignant leprosy, it is unclean. And he shall burn the garment, whether the warp or the woof, in wool or in linen, or anything of skin in which the infection occurs, for it is a malignant leprosy, it shall be burned in the fire. And if the priest shall look, and if the infection has not spread in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof, or in anything of skin, then the priest shall command that they wash the thing in which the infection is, and he shall isolate it for 7 more days. And after the article with the infection has been washed, the priest shall look at it, and if the infection has not changed its appearance, even though the infection has not spread, it is unclean. You shall burn it in the fire, it is a leprous decay, whether the bareness is on the inside or on the outside. And if the priest looks, and if the infection has faded after it was washed, then he shall tear it out of the garment or out of the skin, whether from the warp or from the woof. But if it appears again in the garment, whether in the warp or in the woof, or in anything of skin, it is spreading. You shall burn the article that the infection is in the fire. And the garment, whether the warp or the woof, or any article of skin, which you shall wash, if the infection has departed from them, shall be washed a 2nd time and shall be clean. This is the law of the infection of leprosy in a garment of wool or linen, either in the warp or in the woof, or anything of skin, for pronouncing it clean or for pronouncing it unclean.